ladies and gentlemen. I have invited you to a post-election press statement which I'll issue out for Mugabe's constituency. Today being the 15th day of June 2015. The hotly disputed outcome of the Mugabe West by-election on the 10th of June is public knowledge. I've decided to issue this statement to put closure to the very sad event which has been labeled an election. It is important to record and to detail the extent and depth of the manipulation of electoral processes and electoral institutions through violence and intimidation on the electorate. The extent of uncouth and violent practices contrary to electoral laws perpetrated by several individuals, notably the Mugabe West MP-elect, senior government and party officials, including ministers and traditional leaders, against defenseless citizens is totally unacceptable. This is an indictment on our democracy. The fact that the results were announced in favor of the ZANU-PF candidate does not grant the outcome a seal of the people's approval. The will of the people, nor acceptable in terms of the provisions of the Constitution and the Electoral Act. The situation and conditions prevailing before and on the actual polling day were far from the ideal minimum conditions required for the holding of free, fair and credible elections. Some highlights of the instance are worth reiterating for the record. I'll mention a few examples for attention, but please note that these are not limited to all the occurrences. Pre-polling intimidation and violence. Out of the 24 meetings we applied to convene and subsequently notified the police, only 8 were approved. Of those approved meetings, several were disrupted by the ZANU-PF supporters. Over 150 people were assaulted by ZANU-PF activists, village heads and war veterans. Village heads collected and kept their residents' identification cards and only returned them to them before and during the polling day upon voting. The chiefs and the village heads suggested that the citizen votes were not secret nor secure, and as such could be tracked back to them if they voted for anyone other than the ZANU-PF candidate. Soldiers were deployed in Chichiedza, Sengwe, Matau, Masanga, and Kanibazungu and took over teachers' houses. The soldiers threatened individuals perceived to be loyal to or supporting an independent candidate with death or assault. The chief election agent and 23 polling agents were arrested and detained for more than 4 hours. They were then forced to complete profile forms before they were released without charge due to lack of evidence. On the 5th of June, the village head, Temba Mliswa, also war veteran, chased away my campaign team at Wembe. On the 8th of June, a female shop owner, Miss Mina Yasidi, was severely assaulted and stoned by senior government officials. A shop was forcibly closed and the customers chased out. Again, on the 8th of June, there was distribution of rice, Edoro, and Yangwiju, which was transported by a vehicle with a registration number that I will withhold for now, but it is recorded. This vehicle was part of a convoy led by senior government officials I alluded to earlier. On the 9th of June, one of my chief polling agents was attacked and assaulted with broomsticks and fists by Nigel Mambiwa, who was spotted traveling in a Mazda BT50 truck, which again I withhold the registration number, as he was accompanied by 15 other people. The matter was reported to Magunji Police Station under RB Again, on the 9th of June, village heads, names known, compiled a list of the names of the villagers who were deemed to be supporting the independent candidate. They further threatened to deny such individuals food aid while addressing a meeting at Nyadara Growth Point. Many, if not of these issues, were raised with the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, Zimbabwe Republic Police, and the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, with no tangible remedial action undertaken. The Electoral Court was also approached with the hope that the election would not be sanctioned. However, the court ruled otherwise, a decision that I respect. To that, there seems to be a tendency in the country that institutions which are meant to make decisions with a mandate constitutionally tend to shy away, and for some reason will find a way out. The courts equally are in the same habit of doing that, and they tend to push these matters to other officers, yet no time frame is given, especially when such things are happening, which unfortunately does not go along with their constitutional mandate of ensuring that a free, fair and credible election is conducted. And the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission itself has the power to direct any institution to ensure that the fairness and the credibility and the freedom of the people is there. If it's not there, they should then act. Observations on the polling day, the incidents narrated below, are intended to give an overview of the environment on the election day and not in any way exhaustive. The figures and incidents are snippets of what was recorded by polling agents and could be far more, as some were unable to cover the polling stations for continuous period due to harassment and intimidation. The incidents shall again be officially placed before the relevant authorities for their attention and action. Failure for them to act will again be another indictment to our institutions and processes. The Nyangwisho polling station, Ward 16, 127 people turned away, mainly youth. 50 were assisted voters, of which 43 were women and 7 were men. Within 50 meters of the polling station, war veterans established a desk marking a roll call of villagers coming to vote, at the same time handing IDs to them. I always say that I understand why other organizations have decided not to stand for elections. I stood for elections as an independent candidate, and I would agree with them why they have decided not to. But equally, in moving forward, we need to have people standing these elections so that we gauge and judge whether the reforms are taking shape or not taking shape. Because quite clearly, what prevailed in Mugabe West will certainly prevail 2018. And Mugabe West was not a constituency election, it was a presidential election. And that's what it was. You had 2 vice presidents visiting, and that gives you the magnitude of what that election meant and so on. So what you saw in Mugabe West is what will happen. So if it had not happened, and if I had not stood, we would not know what to do to ensure that the reforms and what we want in terms of the level, the playing field being level, are done. So I still insist that people must stand, but in standing, whatever is the outcome must then be put into action, and people must work towards that. Yes.
For you to put your grievances before the courts, don't you think it's just a formality? Because I don't think there will be much for you to work for, considering how the courts rule in favor of the ruling party.
This is my prayer, and I think this was my point, that it's about time that these institutions have a meaning, have a purpose. And I think it can only come about when they turn when they wear that professional hat and understand that a constitutional mandate to move this country forward. And I think it is important that they take heed of that, because you would not want a situation where people are tired and they know the outcome before it happens. Let me say that I was I've been following the AU meetings in South Africa, and the AU chairman, His Excellency, Mugabe, was very clear in saying that why should, first of all, he talked about how African leaders must follow the constitution. He equally went on to say, why should we have 2 terms? But my question to my beloved president is, why are Zimbabweans being marshaled to guns to go and vote? Does he know that? So to me, the democracy cannot just be a talk. And I think when events in Uringo are happening and he's AU president and he's preaching the constitution, he's preaching the will of the people, is that being exercised in Zimbabwe? And I think it must start from there, that the playing field must be even. And the reason why there will always be problems in Africa with leaders is that the elections are always controversial. And for as long as they remain controversial, and for as long as the playing field is not even, people have no faith in that leader. And they're saying, you have no mandate from us to lead us, so leave office. And any leader who wants to lead must ensure that the playing field is even. I think, to me, that should be the message from the AU chairman, that can the playing field be even? Before we even give 2 terms, or 3 terms, or so many terms to those leaders chosen, where they elected fairly. The focus must be on that. Yes.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. The first one is that if you decide to not to stand for any parliamentary election in the future, don't you think you are betraying the people or thousands of people who voted for you recently? Because they still look up to you and they believe in you. The second question is, having contested previously as a ZANU-PF candidate, and recently having contested as an opposition member to some extent, or as an opposition candidate, though you can say you were independent, what lessons did you draw that you can draw from contesting against ZANU-PF? And what advice can you give to new independent candidates who are entering politics?
Those are good questions. The first question is, I never campaigned. Over 4,000 people voted without campaigning. When 2013, I had nearly 9,000 people who voted for me. And this time, the ZANU-PF candidate had just less than 6,000. The total number of vote cast was 10,200 in 2013, which is just over 13,000. Urungwe West is unique in many ways. Those 4,000 plus are heroes of this country. They are able to carry each other moving forward. In carrying each other moving forward, there needs to be such people in each constituency to take others, to carry others forward. And I see myself being a pivotal player in that, with what I've seen in Urungwe West. In preparing for 2018, we need to be well organized, and we need to have people who, if you can get 4,000 people under such pressure, despite them giving their IDs to village heads and to the army, voting otherwise, you can be rest assured that 2018, no such resource or manpower will be in each constituency. It will be spread around. And there's no way such monitoring will happen as it did. So it certainly, gives me an opportunity, an idea to be able to spread the message, around the country in how we should prepare ourselves for 2018. They have an MP, whether we like it or not, in Kith Guja. And Kith Guja is not the issue. The issue is the system. I mean, this system is a blacksmith. It's not different. It's just the color of the skin that has changed, but the system remains the same. And there's got to be an advocacy of young people, and this is my call, of young people to stand up. You've got over 5 million registered voters, but only about 2 million vote. Where are the rest? I see that the only way you can counter those base camps is to have youths with a message. Who will counter that? A message in terms of the economic empowerment, in terms of the policies of the country. And the same message is repeated. And the same people who go to vote are the same people. They're the old ladies, they're the old people, and the electorate has not changed. And that is the sad part. When I talk about the lessons I've learned, the electorate has not changed. It's the same people whose mindset will never change, but yet there is a majority which can overtake that through a democratic process where you have these base camps beating up people. You must also counter with some base camps which educate people. There's more needed in educating the people, because the electorate, the people who vote, are not changing. The number remains the same. And voter apathy is really on its way up, not on its way down. And I think it is important that the younger people see that. And the only way they can usher change is to take part, is to go to the rural areas, is to have university students who are on a break. They have outreach, which they had kept overnight. A young voter pleaded to have his finger dipped with ink, despite the fact that he was not a registered voter. This he wanted to use as proof, security, and safety that he had voted. The presiding officer consented and recorded this incident. Then they reached the polling station, 31 people were turned away. 23 of them were suspiciously did not appear on the voters' roll, despite some claiming to have voted there in the previous election of 2013. An identified truck with 4 occupants roved around the shopping center, threatening anyone perceived to be voting for me. A food vendor was threatened not to prepare food for my polling agents, resulting in her denying them food. Magororo polling station, Ward 15, war veterans forced about 50 villagers to a polling station at 5 a.m., of which the majority were old. The villagers were forced to sing revolutionary songs and chant slogans. 38 people were turned away, mainly youth, once again, for various reasons, primarily that their names did not appear on the voter roll. They targeted youth 35 and below, with the thinking that the youth would certainly associate with me. A polling agent was assaulted near the polling station by the ZANU-PF candidate. The ZANU-PF candidate threatened to remove the agent's polling agent badge. The matter was reported to a police officer who refused to carry out any investigation or document the case. The village head was a polling agent for ZANU-PF candidate in a clear violation of the code and was communicating with all voters coming into the polling station before they voted. ZANU-PF polling agents shared food and kitchen facilities with the ZEC officials. So you have a village head who is an agent. Constitutionally, he cannot. He has to be apolitical. But that's what was transpiring in the constituency. An identified war veteran was leading the youth in tearing off posters, flyers, and any campaign material belonging to the independent candidate. Masanga polling station, Ward 26, 123 people turned away. Again, mainly used the same government official. Again, chased away my supporters with stones at Masanga shopping center. A resident confirmed the opposition asked him to desist from such conduct. Mugabe, Ward 17. 53 people were turned away, 12 were males and the rest females. 2 did not have identity cards, one of them was alien, and the rest did not appear on the voters' roll. There was widespread intimidation of my supporters by the village head, who is also ZANU-PF district chairperson. His wife was also the ZANU-PF candidate polling agent. The village head and his aide were briefly arrested for recording and taking identity cards from the villagers, but were quickly released 30 minutes later. The village head then went on to address villagers and forced my campaign team to remove their t-shirts. The same village head made routine visits, taking the opportunity to intimidate and insult my polling agents. The polling stations were mainly occupied by the army. There was no freedom. Even those who were not accredited would walk in. You have accreditation as an observer, as a polling agent, but all protocols were ignored. One woman refused to be assisted to vote. She was audibly heard refusing to have a vote recorded per machine and shouted that she wanted to vote for Mliswa. On leaving the polling station, she was attacked by the person who had accompanied her to vote, suffering tissue damage to the lower and upper lip, and she was rushed to Sengwe Clinic. So bad was the intimidation, 4 voters pocketed their ballot papers and wanted to show them to the ZANU-PF chairman as proof that they voted for ZANU-PF. The Rengwe polling station, 115, 173 people were turned away. The majority were youths below 35, with a few old people who were turned away as their names did not appear on the voters roll. Most of them indicated that they had voted at the same polling station in 2013. Without any accreditation, the chief entered the polling station and stayed for hours. He argued that the support from the presiding officer, that as chief he was observing and that was happening in his land. An identified village head formed a separate queue for his villagers to enter the polling station, indicated that he wanted his people to vote all at once and attend the funeral. After objections, the line was merged with others. Village heads told their constituency that no one was supposed to be found at his or homestead. Even those who were not eligible to vote came to the polling station in groups. It is with these observations, which would certainly lead to us concluding, and as I conclude this statement, as I read this statement, 2 individuals are still hospitalized, recovering from the wounds inflicted on the election day by ZANU-PF activists. This election was marred by numerous incidents of violence, intimidation, and rigging, and for the sake of time, 95 mentioned, as I have only highlighted a few from the 6 out of the total of 35 polling stations in the West. It is also alarming to note that over 4,000 people were turned away from voting. Of this number, the majority were the youth under the age of 35. Worse still, the glaring fact that most of them insisted that they had voted at the same polling station in previous years. We have polling stations which were not named where since 1980 up to 2013, they never had over 100 people voting. But in this election, they had at least 500 people. Only those without a conscience are celebrating this outcome. In fact, they've managed to sow and water the seeds of anger and resentment towards ZANU-PF through their collective and individual actions. I again reiterate my utmost appreciation to the people of Virunga West who peacefully and bravely expressed their choice. They are the victors. I'll take this opportunity to explore the many options that lie ahead as a native citizen and the different spheres of Greater Zimbabwe. I've decided not to stand for election as a member of parliament in any constituency and pursue other interests, but at the same time be able to work on the reforms that are much needed in the country. There is absolutely no reason for one to be a legislator when clearly the things that are happening are contradictory of the role of a legislator. I think the onus is up to those who have experienced this to ensure that the playing field is even moving forward. And I think we've also, I'm also making an application to the courts challenging these results, not for me, but I have a conscience at the end of the day, and I have, as a Zimbabwean, a mandate to ensure that the playing field is level. My conscience is my master. I cannot walk away from the Virunga West people of Zimbabwe without ensuring that there is some remedy that is in action or a pipeline to ensure that it happens. My prayer is that the institutions which are responsible, from the judiciary to the Electoral Commission, to the Zimbabwe Republic Police, to the Human Rights Commission, are just not rubber stamping and are just not in office to think patronize and keep jobs. We need, as Zimbabwe, to have professionals who will ensure that their mandate is just beyond patronizing certain individuals. But again, them observing that they've got a constitutional mandate to ensure that they work for the better of Zimbabwe. I thank you. Are there any questions?